If you know anything about my content, you know that I often talk shit about Ubisoft as a company. I started doing it as a meme, but as I've played more of the Ubisoft games, I've come to a realization. The Ubisoft hate isn't merely a meme, it's justified. This company, who at one point set the industry standard for open-world AAA gaming experiences, has evolved into what is now a shell of its former self. User scores for all of their popular franchises have been decreasing consistently over the last 10 to 12 years, and this includes everything from Assassin's Creed to Ghost Recon to Far Cry and even Just Dance. Now, I'm not saying that Ubisoft is a completely useless megacorporation with no creativity or talent whatsoever. That seems to be a pretty popular take on Reddit, and I disagree with it. They've made some really good games. Rainbow Six Siege was one of the most innovative FPS games that the genre has seen in years. Primal, while quite boring and not a good Far Cry game, was at least creative and attempted to do something new. But overall, the company has been trending downward, and the number of creative, risky, and revolutionary ideas and concepts that they pursue have dwindled exponentially. When comparing Far Cry 6 to Far Cry 3, it feels like a downgrade on nearly every level. The writing is subpar, the gunplay is lacking, and the AI is brain dead. In and of itself, it's a mediocre game, but it feels like a cheap knockoff that's trying to fill the shoes of its predecessors. The same goes for the newer Assassin's Creed games. Valhalla is a decent game, but it isn't a good Assassin's Creed game. It's trying to imitate bigger, better open-world RPG experiences, and it stands in this weird middle ground that doesn't make it exceptional, but doesn't make it terrible either. Once again, it's quite mediocre. And this trend goes for pretty much every recent release in each of their popular franchises. Ubisoft is the king of mediocrity in the gaming industry, and their recent shift from creative, genre-defining games to uninspired, safe, and stale concepts really cements this position for them. While I often do, I promise that this time I am not talking out of my ass. Yeah, I've memed on Ubisoft for a long time, it's even in my Twitter bio. But after doing some digging, I've discovered that my memes are in fact quite true. I've spent a few months analyzing the company as a whole and trying to determine what has happened to this once shining beacon of AAA gaming. And today, I think I have the answer. So in today's video, I'm going to be doing a deep dive into Ubisoft and talking about their relative downfall over the decades. I'm going to explain why modern Ubisoft games are trending downward with user reviews, why their games feel like generic copies of each other, and how this relates to the gaming industry as a whole. It's time to talk about Ubisoft and why they are the king of mediocrity. The Walking Dead used to be my favorite TV series of all time. I was one of the handful of fans who started in Season 1 and watched consistently all the way up to Season 10. The show was really good and intriguing for most of this journey, but around Season 7 or 8, I began to realize that it was going nowhere. The team continued to do the same things over and over, and it never seemed like it was going to end. Once I suffered through Seasons 8 and 9 and eventually made it to 10, I gave up. The show got stupid. I stopped watching it, and ultimately my view of the show as a whole went down because my last experience with it was unpleasant. Now, if you ask me my favorite shows, it wouldn't even be on my list. This is exactly what's happened to Assassin's Creed for me and for many other gamers as well. A game that was once the pinnacle of open-world stealth games with outstanding writing, amazing combat, and intriguing concepts has become something much different than what it once was. Ubisoft set the bar high early on in the series and has failed to deliver ever since. Again, I'm not saying all of the games are bad, but the good ones are often buried beneath the countless layers of mediocrity. Let's talk about what I mean with this, with Assassin's Creed in particular as an example. The original Assassin's Creed came out in 2007, and it was absolutely revolutionary for the gaming industry. This was the first real open-world stealth game that wasn't an FPS, and the parkour system was something that was never seen before. While overall the game was lacking in a few different areas, it challenged the norm of the industry and created something extremely valuable. From here, Assassin's Creed 2 was released in 2009, and it was an exceptional game. This game marked the introduction of Ezio, one of, if not the most beloved Assassin's Creed protagonist to date. Assassin's Creed 2 topped the first game in every way, shape, and form, with a new notoriety system, giant puzzles that you could use to unlock cool outfits, counterattacks, dyes that allowed you to change the appearance of your clothes, the Abstergo story arc, and much more. It was a beautiful game, and it was the first title in the series that really took off and got some real traction. The story and the writing in this game was extremely immersive, and the story of Ezio was inspirational. There was a lot of character development, emotion, and heart put into this story, and it has allowed Ezio to still be known as the best Assassin's Creed character of all time, even today. Ubisoft absolutely killed it with the development of this game, and you can tell that they began to see the potential of the Assassin's Creed series. Their future as a company was beginning to unfold. After 2 came Brotherhood. This game continued the story of Ezio and kept on par with the standards set by the previous games. It didn't improve exponentially on anything in particular, with only a few big changes and additions being made, but the continuation of the story of Ezio kept players interested and allowed Brotherhood to be looked at in a similar light to 2 as one of the best games in the series. These 3 games sold like crazy, and Ubisoft knew that they had created a cash cow. So, as work was nearing completion on the 4th release in the series, they determined that it was time to turn Assassin's Creed into an annual franchise. But first came Assassin's Creed Revelations. Revelations was the finale to the beautiful trilogy of Ezio games. The game was pretty much the same, and other than the closure of the Ezio story, not much was done in terms of innovation. Now, with that chapter done, it was time for the annual releases and a lot of money to flow in. It was time for things to go downhill. With the exception of Black Flag, which is looked at as one of the best games in the series, all other releases were downhill from here when it came to user review scores. 3 was the first step towards Ubisoft's incoming mediocrity with a score of 6.70 on average by users on Metacritic. No, not the Metacritic critics, because they always suck and they're always wrong, the users who reviewed this game themselves. The game was extremely slow to start off in the story, the protagonist was a bit lacking, but it was made up for with improved combat, a sick setting, and the introduction of naval battles. Again, it was decent, but not exceptional. Then 4 came around and it was amazing. The naval battle game mode in 3 was basically fleshed out in a full pirate-themed game. The gameplay was some of the best in the series, and it was the most fun out of any of the games. But compared once again to the standards set by Ezio, the story was a bit shallow, and Abstergo Entertainment was reduced from a beautiful plot device that connected everything together to an annoying waste of time that took away from the main story. The adventure and freedom in this game was unmatched, and the sales proved that Ubisoft was doing something right. The money began rolling in, which then caused things to go downhill exponentially from here. Taking a look at the user scores for all of the games released so far at this point, we have a 7.43, 8.3, 8.33, 7.47, 6.7, and 7.9. From here, Ubisoft began to run out of ideas, and the series turned towards mediocrity. Unity was an absolute shit show, with crates requiring real money to unlock, RPG elements that didn't quite hit the nail on the head for what Assassin's Creed was about, extremely repetitive side quests and missions, and a restriction of abilities that you had access to early in the other games. It seemed like Ubisoft tried to slow everything down and keep people playing for longer for no apparent reason. It got a 4.87. Then came Syndicate, which was probably one of the most forgettable Assassin's Creed games of all time. The characters were bland, the world was bigger for no reason, the side missions were everywhere with no purpose behind them whatsoever, and it didn't sell well. Everyone kept comparing every release to the good ones like 2 and Black Flag, and it caused them to see each new release in a light that was blocked by the rose-colored glasses of their predecessors. Were these games inherently bad? No, again, that's the point of this video. But they were mediocre at best and didn't stand out among the crowd of good releases coming out in this time frame. Ubisoft focused on scale instead of quality, and it caused everything to be diluted to the point to where it wasn't anything amazing. Their writing declined, the side missions on all of their games were pointless, the maps were big and empty, the characters were extremely forgettable, and it caused a lot of problems. With declining sales and a decreasing itch for Assassin's Creed games, Ubisoft decided to take some time off to give this series a space to breathe. So they waited 2 years and decided to rework everything from the ground up. They took their time. Then came Origins, the much-needed refresher to a stale series. This game was outstanding, with a new character that rivaled that of Ezio, a heavy overhaul of everything and a focus on RPG elements, an impressive rich world, and a return to what made Assassin's Creed so good, with new and improved mechanics to back up the solid foundation. My point in all of this is that annual releases tarnish a game franchise's legacy. The beautiful view of what the game looks like in your memory is absolutely shat on when the developers continue to release mediocre, uninspired sequels that take away from what the original games were known for. Of course, when Ubisoft slowed down to take a step back and think about what they were doing, the game improved exponentially. There was once again hope for the Assassin's Creed series and its return to greatness. And then, just like they did in the past, they began to milk the new and improved formula to get every possible dollar out of it. Right after Origins came Odyssey, which was Origins but worse. It had the same combat but with less interesting bullet sponge enemies, a worse story, no mention of anything of the iconic stuff in Assassin's Creed like the Brotherhood and the Templars, and an overall generic and uninspired feel and look. It was the unity of the new and improved Assassin's Creed. It was average. Then, directly after this, they released Valhalla, which isn't a bad game, but was just plain unnecessary. This game had an absurd amount of filler content, another uninteresting main character, and yet another forgettable story. The most recent two games are doing the exact same things that Ubisoft was able to fix by their short hiatus, and there's no telling how long they're going to milk this new formula for. Instead of shifting more resources to promising projects that break the mold of what they usually do, they keep doing the same thing over and over to try to get as much money out of consumers as possible. And it doesn't only happen with Assassin's Creed. Far Cry has been on a constant decline ever since the fourth game in the series. 3 was the peak, 4 was a really good game, and ever since then, all of the things that made these games so iconic has been forgotten about. The writing has declined exponentially, the worlds have somehow gotten less interesting, and the gunplay feels like a watered-down version of what it once was. Not to mention, the villains have gone downhill in quality every year since Voss, and Ubisoft knows this. That's why they released a DLC in Far Cry 6 where you can play as the villains from these older games, which is honestly the best idea that they've had in years. And it's sold like crazy. The problem with annual releases is that as you continue to put out the same product again and again with the same branding and the same concept, users compare each release to the previous instead of looking at it in a fresh perspective. So sometimes things do get skewed a bit. The new Star Wars movies are compared to the old ones, which makes them seem so much worse, even though they're already fucking terrible. Imagine if Apex Legends was released as Titanfall 3. You would look at it a lot differently and say, whoa, this shit sure does suck compared to the old games. Ubisoft has a trend of innovating, wearing out that innovation until it's tired and people don't like it, and then repeating the process. They milk every dollar out of game franchises and are more focused on consistent profits instead of creating something special. Yeah, profits are important because if you aren't profitable, you can't exist in the first place, but it shouldn't be your only focus. That's why you see a lot of these AAA game companies shift from innovation, which puts them into the limelight in the first place, to stagnation, which keeps the money rolling in. Imagine a new John Wick movie coming out. All of the trailers and all of the marketing talks about how this movie has the best action sequences to date. The fight scenes are going to be some of the best that you've ever seen in cinema, says the producer in an interview. All of the magazines that talk about the new John Wick movie agree and say, wow, I felt like I was watching a real physical fight in every scene. So, as a consumer, you're excited to see this movie and you want to watch it because of those marketed fight scenes. So, you go to the movies and drop $30 on tickets and popcorn, you sit down, and all of the fight sequences look like the train scene in Black Panther that could have been a cutscene for a PS2 game. Yeah, you probably could still enjoy the movie, but it's not going to be as good as what you thought it would be. This is how I feel with every new open-world Ubisoft game that comes out. The games are all marketed as an awesome, living, breathing, open-world experience, but all of the worlds are massive and empty. It's like buying a 12-bedroom house but only putting furniture in the living room. When I was playing Ghost Recon Wildlands, I really began to realize how wide Ubisoft's worlds were. The map in this game is absolutely massive, and there are tons of different regions to explore. The problem, however, is that the world is extremely shallow. There are countless locations, but all of them are pretty much the same. Each region is identical to the last with a reskin of the environment and a few minor changes. Yeah, this game is aimed to be a military shooter, so who cares about the world, but at the same time, they could have accomplished the same thing without such an inflated world size. They tend to do stuff like this just so that they can say they've done it, to use as marketing materials in order to get more people to buy the game, and it makes the game suffer because of it. Now, I will say that Ubisoft does a good job at making their worlds look good. They always have outstanding visuals, pretty good graphics, and believable environments. But the positives of the worlds usually stop there. The AI in most of their games are absolutely brain dead, and they wander around like useless robots with the intelligence of one of those automated vacuum cleaners. The worlds are filled with activities, but they're just collectathons and meaningless side missions that add nothing to the story or the development of the characters or plot. Side missions in Assassin's Creed games are often just fetch quests that don't serve a purpose in the overall narrative and just pad your playtime numbers with boring activities. Stuff like collecting feathers or delivering something to someone. For comparison, in everyone's favorite game, Red Dead Redemption 2, a majority of the side missions and activities are exciting, complex, and different every time. There's an entire questline called The Veteran, where you develop a friendship with a disabled veteran and you see his character developed as you interact with him. There's a mission where you work alongside the inventor of the electric chair by capturing people who are in his way and acquiring materials in order to make the invention possible. Each of these side missions and objectives make the world feel complex, interesting, and alive, and many Ubisoft games are lacking these things. Sticking with the same example, the different areas on the map in Red Dead Redemption 2 serve a purpose, with unique scenery, different AI characters, different music, and an entirely different feel at each and every section. Ubisoft games, on the other hand, have the same foundation with a fresh coat of paint on every region. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, it feels basically the same. And this problem continues across many other modern Ubisoft games. I loved Assassin's Creed 2 because the world genuinely felt different and unique around every corner. The Tuscany region of the map was colorful, open, and bright, and needed to be traversed with a horse because of its scale. Florence was dense and sprawling with a focus on art and culture, and Venice was lined with canals that made you change up your gameplay drastically. Each region had a specific feel and charm to it, and it changed as you went through the game. Valhalla, on the other hand, feels pretty much the same all the way around, and one asset could have easily been copied and pasted from one part of the map to another without much of a difference. It was amazing, and it sucks to see that things like this have changed over time. The rest of the points that I've mentioned so far in this video are a bit on the objective side. While a lot of people may agree, some may disagree and say that I'm entirely wrong, and that's okay. But the decline in Ubisoft's writing is something that can't be ignored. In order to make this video, I played through a lot of Ubisoft games, both old and new, and the decline of the stories and characters is apparent from a mile away. Let's start with Far Cry. Far Cry 3 without a doubt had the best story in the series, and one of the most unique and creative stories that I've ever seen in gaming. It follows the story of Jason Brody, a loser-ass nerd who was captured by a group of pirates in the middle of the jungle while on vacation. This guy was a little bitch because he didn't have the balls to kill people and save his own life. Thank God for his tough brother, the macho man himself, because that's how they're gonna get out of this situation Oh shit. Well, that's unfortunate. You see, Jason Brody just witnessed the death of his beloved brother at the hands of this mentally deranged villain known as Voss. Jason, in order to enact his revenge, trains with a group of jungle natives to learn what he needs to do to save his friends. Early in the game, you see Jason squirm when he has to kill people and skin animals, and he admits that he's a wimp who isn't going to make it in this tough world. But something happens. As Jason begins killing more and more people to save his friends and get vengeance, he starts to like it. The intense interactions between Voss continue down a path of absolute insanity until he eventually manages to get his revenge and kill the guy who turned his life upside down. Now, free from everything and reunited with his friends, it's time for them all to escape and get the hell off this crazy island. But Jason, he's changed. He realizes that he likes killing, that this is his home now. He's become a monster. So he continues to stay on the island to hunt down yet another murderer who's been causing the island locals a lot of trouble. All of his friends leave, minus Riley, who had apparently died earlier in the game. So, as warlord murderer Jason hunts down his final boss, he learns that Riley is still alive, and after completing the task, they flee to the island to meet up with his remaining friends. But they were captured by the same locals who needed Jason's help in the first place. So, Jason goes to ask why they captured him, some crazy shit unfolds, and Jason then has to decide between staying with the locals with this beautiful, crazy woman and killing his friend to do so, or leaving the woman who shaped Jason into the man he's become today. This story had some balls, and it wasn't afraid to do something. By playing this game, we witnessed the first-hand evolution of Jason Brody from baby-back bitch to insane psychopath murderer. It was risky, and it was a story that was never seen before in a video game. They tackled complex subjects with great villains, memorable characters, and they really made you think about the effects of killing all of these people. Was it really Jason Brody, or was it you who was in control of him? Now, let's fast forward to the shitstorm that was Far Cry 6. This story follows Danny, the forgettable main character who lives on the island of Yara, which has fallen to the mean, green, scary dictator named Gus from Breaking Bad. They want to escape to get away. But as they do, their boat gets sunk because Mr. Gus finds out that his son was also trying to escape and he caught them all on the boat. So he sunk it, and Danny's friend Lita dies, with her last words being for Danny to overthrow the government and kill Anton Castillo, the scary villain. I'm not going to spoil the remainder of the story for this game since it's so much newer than Far Cry 3, but let me tell you, it feels pointless. Even just based on what I've told you, it's obvious that the setup isn't the same as in 3. In 3, Jason Brody has no choice other than to rescue his friends and kill Voss. I mean, Voss murdered his brother right in front of him and ruined his life. You see Jason's character development as he struggles to learn the ropes of combat and as he pushes through his inner barriers to do whatever necessary to help his friends and family. It's great character development. In 6, Danny's running away from the corrupt, miserable island, and because she wants to escape, and because Anton causes her friend to die, she decides to hunt down the entire corrupt government and kill them to overthrow it. Yeah, there's still some motivation behind it, but logically it doesn't make much sense. Why would someone who is trying to flee to get away from the island magically decide to resist and try to single-handedly overthrow an entire government because her dying friend, who you barely knew as the player, told her to do so? It makes more sense in 3 because Jason is trapped on the island and he doesn't have a choice, and he fights himself to do it. But why would Danny completely 360 on herself and turn into a warlord gorilla just because someone said she should? This is the same person who talks about how their only goal in life is to survive, and how growing up in the orphanage taught her that they need to do whatever it takes to stay safe. I mean, Danny literally says that moments before Lita dies, and then magically changes her mind afterwards. It makes no sense, and the writing is just shallow. Danny is forgettable. And not to mention, Anton Castillo, the main villain, is barely in the game. The best part about 3 and 4 was seeing the relationships between Pagan Min and Voss and the player build over time. You see the frustrations building up and you understand why the plot goes the direction that it does. But in 6, the motivation for most of the stuff that happens makes no sense. The villain doesn't help the story very much, and the relationship barely exists. The writing, just like a lot of other aspects of Ubisoft games, are quite mediocre. And this trend continues with most, if not all, of their popular series. The things that I've talked about so far are related mainly to design and management decisions that have negatively affected Ubisoft games as a whole. But there's something more minor, but actually quite major, that I want to talk about. Ubisoft has always insisted on using their own platform and technology, and it makes no sense. All Ubisoft games on Steam force you to connect not through Steam, the platform that you bought the game on, but through Ubisoft Connect. Connect is their way of trying to make their own network alternative to Steam, where instead of just playing the game with your friends that you already have on Steam, you have to register through their website and use their interface and technology. This in and of itself isn't bad, because you can see this in games like Apex, where cross-platform is important. But it's the fact that Connect absolutely sucks dick that makes it so miserable. When you buy a game on Steam, you have to sign in and register on Ubisoft Connect and make your account and link your account and complete loads of pointless tasks that don't even work due to server outages or errors. The only real point in this software is a way for Ubisoft to sell more skins and cosmetics for their new games, and they're more focused on making some extra money than they are on creating a good user experience. I don't know anyone who actually likes this shit, and it's much more irritating than it needs to be for people who are just trying to support the company and play Ubisoft games. Even more annoying is that a lot of the older games are so heavily focused on this platform that they don't even have Steam achievements, which gets on my nerves because I love achievements. But that one's just me and it's not that big of a deal. Connect, though, is infuriatingly bad and it needs to go. Now, there are a lot of other things that I could get into in this video, one of which being the disastrous launch of Ubisoft NFTs, which is the stupidest thing I have ever seen in gaming. I'm not going to do a deep dive into it though, because Upper Echelon made a great video talking about the entire situation, and I'll link it below. But in short, Ubisoft decided to announce that it was releasing exclusive gaming NFTs in their dead recent title called Ghost Recon Breakpoint. We aren't even going to mention the fact that this game was dead upon arrival, or the fact that each NFT wasn't even an exclusive item, which defeats the entire purpose of NFTs as a whole, or the fact that they required hundreds or even thousands of hours of playtime to get it. No, the worst part about this whole planned project was that your NFTs, which are supposed to be decentralized and on the blockchain, were really just cosmetic items that were stored on your Ubisoft Connect account. The same account that isn't reliable and causes a lot of problems. The entire plan behind this project was for cheap, lazy publicity, and Ubisoft lost an opportunity to absolutely revolutionize the gaming industry with a good concept that was extremely poorly executed. Check out that video I mentioned a minute ago when you're done watching this one if you want to learn more about this situation, because it was a complete mess. Again, my point in this video isn't to say that Ubisoft sucks at everything they do. Some of their newer titles have the potential to be extremely good, and some of their games are quite good already and will be looked at as a positive release. But overall, it is undeniable that they've gotten lazy as a company and that they've made a decline into mediocrity over the years. Do you agree with the things that I've said in this video, or do you think that I'm blowing things out of proportion? Do you also think that many of their popular franchises have gone downhill over time? Am I completely wrong about all of this? Let me know in the comments. If you guys enjoyed this video, feel free to follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and join my group chat to talk about games with me and fans. I will see you guys next time, and peace.